Well, good afternoon. My name is Amol Nirgudkar. I'm the CEO of Patient Prism, and we are here again in our makeshift home-based Patient Prism studios, and talking about all the concerns we have during this time period, while we're all sitting home and our offices are closed or either open for emergencies. And there's a lot of questions everybody has, and most of us, you and I both, Teresa, are watching webinars produced by some of the most amazing people in this industry. And we're doing our part at Patient Prism to get the right information to the right people at the right time so they can make the right decisions. Because in business or anything else in life, sometimes timing of decisions matters a lot. Teresa Duncan, most of you know, I don't need to even introduce her on this topic. She's done lots of work with us. But Teresa is a nationally renowned expert on dental insurance. She speaks at all conferences all over the country, all the big ones and the small ones and everything in between. She wrote an amazing book called Moving Your Patients to an Yes, focused around easy insurance conversations. And if you haven't gotten that book, you definitely need to order it from her website, which is Odyssey Management. She's been named as one of the top 25 women in dentistry by the Dental Products Report. And she is a fun person to be around, a wealth of information on lots of topics. So Teresa Duncan, welcome again to our Patient Prism webinar.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. My question right off the bat, I mean, there's a lot of dental practices today, obviously, as we said, closed. And they're thinking about a lot of things. One of them is insurance, and some of them have been in certain networks, participating with certain payers. Some of them have not been in a lot of provider networks. And the question right now is, what are you seeing in this crisis time with respect to insurance participation? What's the grapevine, or what's the talk of the industry regarding participation with insurance?
So I've had a couple calls recently, actually a lot of calls recently with some doctors. And the one thing that keeps coming up is that they really had no idea just how big the revenue stream was from carriers. They had an idea. They knew that they were busy because of the carriers. But when they really took a look at their numbers, it was really startling to them that 80% of their money was coming from carriers, 70%. You work with practices too, you see those huge numbers.
Right.
And so they've been asking, how do I reduce my dependence on carriers, which is always a really good business decision. I mean, reducing risk and not having all your eggs in one basket is just an optimal way to run business. And they're really starting to look at that. Are they actually making money off of the procedures, or are they in the hole? Because if you think about it and you take a look at how many of your fillings are done, if you're losing $50 on one surface filling or two surface filling, just multiply that out by how many you do during the year. It really becomes substantial. Now, on the flip side of that, I have a lot of offices, our doctors that have called me and said, I'm really worried. I'm not going to be busy. I was already sort of busy, but could have been busier before. Now I think it's going to get worse. Am I now supposed to be looking at participation? So there's not a one size fits all that I can tell these doctors. It really is customized, and you really have to know your numbers, which is why people like you come into play. You can't make these decisions unless you know your numbers. So yeah, I'm hearing both sides of the spectrum. And one call I might get, I need to get off plans. The next call immediately, I need to sign up with them all. So it's really all over the map.
Sometimes we end up having these knee-jerk reactions to, and this is obviously I'm hoping once in a 100-year event,
Right.
where you say, okay, I'm dependent on these insurance companies, but even if you were not, let's say, you still would have no business currently because nobody's showing up. So sometimes you don't want to kill the obvious thing that's in front of you because you think that was giving you revenue and that stopped and maybe something else would. So you're completely right. You've got to look at the math and the reimbursement, obviously, for all the things that you do and what it costs you. Um,
Yeah, and one interesting, I'm really curious to see how this plays out, because the conventional wisdom has been that if a patient comes in and doesn't have insurance, maybe they're using a membership plan or something like that,
right,
that patients would traditionally have more money to spend in your practice. They're more aware of the true cost of dentistry.
sure.
So if more of our patients lose their insurance and they start moving to this, will that be the case? Or will it shake out in the end that a patient is a patient is a patient, and it really depends on how much they can pay? So I'm curious to see where that goes.
It is true because you're right. At the end of the day, it's still about, as you say, you got to get them to a yes,
Yes.
and it's not entirely driven by. Yes, insurance plays a big part because
Hmm.
it helps defray the cost, but at the end of the day, um, if you have been convinced that the treatment that you are accepting is going to improve your life
Yeah.
and all that stuff, at the end of the day, people will find money, whether it's coming from an insurance or it's coming uh, from your pocket.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely. And I think it is going to be a very interesting thing to come back and talk about next year.
right.
Whether what you see your clients are experiencing and what I hear on the road. We should revisit this next year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think people start thinking about their businesses at this time. We are doing the same thing at Patient Prism. Is you look at all your costs, all your sources of revenue, what's coming, what's going, what is costing us. It's giving us a great opportunity to look inside of our businesses. Sometimes we don't get that much time, and this is a good opportunity to evaluate your insurance participation, and looking at what's good, what's bad, and what's okay to keep,
Yeah.
what we should bring on. And this is something that you can advise on easily, very easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have these conversations all the time about it, with former clients or people that have heard me speak. And I do love talking about it, but I will say that at the end of the day, it makes me very sad, and my heart breaks for a lot of the doctors I'm talking to. I'm sure you're the same way.
Absolutely.
They're just in
Uh,
such a tough spot. And, I think, wow, I'm in a tough spot, but then I don't have employees depending on me. The mental anxiety some of these doctors have is it just breaks my heart.
it's same here, absolutely. I mean, sometimes you wonder, you're not only carrying your own burden, but you're carrying the burden for everybody else who's calling you. And it sometimes feels like, sometimes I feel like Groundhog Day every single day. It's another same bad the stories are coming out of everywhere.
Yeah.
But there's good things coming too.
Hmm.
There is on my Facebook post this morning, I'm part of all these dental groups everywhere on Facebook. We had one dentist there. She has a few practices in the state of Washington, and Delta Dental apparently gave her a grant and loan.
Yeah.
Um, it was $15,000 or $25,000 or something like that. So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, really? Is Delta going to do that all across the country? So
So
is there anything going on with this? Like Delta, talk about that because I think people would love to get some help.
sure. And as far as I know, it's really only Delta that has started doing this. So I'm curious if the other carriers are going to fall in line. So for their participating doctors, they're not going to do it for everyone. For the participating doctors, what some of them have done, because remember, it's not just one. There is one large Delta, but when they operate across the country, they're broken up into regions. So
Right.
the different regions have decided to do different things. So you have some of them that are giving a grant that doesn't have to be paid back, which, I had to read that like 3 times to make sure.
I know. I was surprised. Yeah.
So some are doing a grant only, grant plus a money back, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then some only just money back. And some of the deltas have not commented on it, but I suspect it's going to roll through. The national is going to say, look, you should do this. I suspect that's what's going to happen. So the money back issue is where the loan is where I'm a little concerned. Now, again, it depends on your situation. If you're really in need and you need this cash, it's probably the best option for you. If you
Right.
don't need it, don't worry about it. But what they're going to do is they're going to tally up your claims total for last year, and they're going to give you a small percentage. And everyone's been different. So I've seen 1, I've seen 2%. They'll give you that back once a month to get you going until this is all done. Now, what the unfortunate part is that they are going to want that back. And what they'll do is they'll withhold it from upcoming insurance checks, which as an insurance coordinator, that's a nightmare. It's just a nightmare because I have to figure out some new way of accounting. And Amol, you're going to have to figure out how to advise your clients on it too, because that's going to be a line item too that you'll need to look at.
Correct.
My friend Sandy Perdue gave a really good piece of advice that anything that you get as far as supplements from the insurance carriers, open it up in a separate account, and that way you can account for it as it goes on. And I'm curious to see how, any guidance that you have, I'd love to hear, if you have it, whenever you have it. So with the loans, they're not going to take the whole amount out of the bulk checks right away. It'll be a percentage of the percentage that they're going to take back each check run that they do. So it's going to be serious accounting. And if your insurance coordinator is not good with that already, you're going to have to make sure it's done correctly, or you're going to lose money somewhere along the way.
I mean, in the accounting world, we always used to say, you got to have separation. So separate the funds, right? Separate them. Like with the PPP, the recommendation is you put that in a separate bank account so you can account for it. And then you can easily keep a track of what's going on, because accounting becomes a nightmare, especially when who do you give credit to for what claim, and how much do you apply to each patient. It's going to be quite an interesting exercise. So yeah, absolutely. I think Washington State was the only one that actually sent an email out to its participating providers, and that's how they applied, and it got approved within 48 hours.
So yesterday, Delta Dental of Virginia, where I am, they just sent that out. So they're following suit, and they are offering the grant plus the option of the loan as well. So yeah, check your email. And this is something that's kind of off topic, but very important. Your provider contract that you sign, you need to make sure that the email is updated on that, because they're not sending out anything by paper right now. They're sending it electronically. So so check your email, because if your office manager is the contact person, or if your negotiating company is the contact person, you may not receive notifications. So always make sure doctors, the contract signer, are the contract person on that account.
And you may have a person who is left, and that's their email on the books. You might want to check your spam filter, because it might go in spam. Lots of stuff happen, and we get so inundated with emails these days. We just forget about them, and it's easy to miss an important email. It's happened to me. Like, oh my God, it's one of the 300 emails I got today, and I forgot to look at it. So good idea. I think this is a good thing from Delta to do to help out providers during this time. On that note, a slightly different question is around from the carrier side. If I'm Delta, or if I'm one of the carriers, we look at these job loss numbers are just staggering, right? We may have 20 million people out of a job. Many of them are going to have insurance, dental insurance. It's going to be lost. So are they, the question is, from a carrier standpoint, let's not talk about the patients. From a carrier standpoint, are they worried that dentists, from participation standpoint, are they going to reduce? Are they thinking that many dentists are going to get out of participation? What's your thought process on that?
What's really interesting about the carriers is, we as providers don't really look at it from their point of view, but when you do, you realize how complex it is. And again, not carrier, I don't love carriers more than I love providers, but I totally understand their business model. So let me bring this into some focus for the listeners. So before COVID, pre-COVID, there were a lot of doctors getting out of network already. So one of the focuses on most of the carriers was to preserve their network, because they can't sell a plan without a good network behind them, right? So that really is what the employer is looking for: access, affordability. So they were already realizing that many people were dropping off. So we have a lot of new dentists who are coming up, of course, and they'll probably still participate. But a lot of their veteran doctors who see a lot of patients, when they get out of network, that is a problem for them. So what I'm hearing now, and I've talked to 2 different negotiation companies just in this past week, and I was really surprised to hear this. what they've found is that the carriers are starting to come back with better fee schedules. They're actually relaxing it a little bit, and I think it's because they do want to have more providers in there. So let's go even further away from providers. Let's talk about the carrier's relationship with the employers. So I'm sure that you've heard on the news that auto insurance is reimbursing, because you haven't been driving.
Right. All states doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of places are reimbursing. I know for a fact employers are asking their medical premiums, their dental premiums, because people aren't going to the dentist. Can we at least extend this policy for this year another 6 months, like stretch out the maximum? Can we waive the frequency limitations, or can we just not pay on this right now because nobody's going, all my people are laid off?
Right.
So the carriers are thinking, oh my gosh, this is horrible for us too. So it stinks all around. So because of that, I do think we're going to see a lot of relaxation in the fee negotiations. And I'm just saying, I've only heard this past week. Reached out to many more to find out. But if that's the case, this might be a really good time to sign up with a good fee schedule, if you can get a good fee schedule. And, that makes a big difference. So if you've not renegotiated your fees in a long time, usually every 18 months is when you can do it.
Sure.
GARD only allows once per 3 years, but if you can negotiate now, it might be the time to do it, because you might be able to get that extra bump. So, and that's a whole different conversation, but I was really surprised to hear that. I really thought that there would be an opportunity to, freeze the fees. And one indication of that is in California, the Delta of California was actually going to lower the specialist fee schedule starting July 1st, and they postponed that. And it's optics, number one, but also it's smart business, because they knew a lot of specialists were already planning on getting out of network, and now they're probably rethinking, well, maybe to get through post-COVID, I need to stay in network. A lot of moving pieces there.
So the answer is obviously based on your anecdotal conversations, is that carriers are probably concerned,
Yes.
and the combination of factors. They realize from their analysis that it was not making as much money. They're too dependent on it, and with people losing their insurance, that sort of affects some of the eligibility and stuff like that. So. I think that the point from this conversation is let's negotiate, let's talk to carriers and see if we can get a better deal to stay within the network and get a better fee schedule.
So and it is interesting too, if we keep going back, you were talking about people losing their insurance. Well, a lot of the employers are going to take a look at the premiums, and honestly, most of the cost of dental premiums, most of it is borne by the employee. They don't realize it, right? So is an employer going to say, hey, this is purely optional, and employees are finally going to look at their expenses and they drop it? This has been something standalone dental carriers have been worried about for the last couple of years, to be honest. And I don't know what the election's going to hold. We're not going to get into that.
Right.
If it does ever go to single payer, you can bet standalone dental plans are going to have a hard time. So that's going to look totally different. I'm going to have to relearn things. You're going to have to relearn new accounting rules.
Right. Right.
So, we need to keep our eyes open when it comes to election time as well.
Well, you're right. I mean, that's a completely, we don't even know. I mean, this is, there's a lot of talk right now about alternatives to participation for providers. And what do you see in the industry as good alternatives? As again, this matters more because if I've lost my job and I don't have dental insurance, I need something that's going to be something that's going to help me afford the treatment. So what are you seeing that is good right now in terms of alternatives to participation?
So I think if it does happen that employees are starting to pull away from having a lot of coverage, one thing that could be offered is HSAs. And I'd love to hear your take on it, because you know that better than I do. There is a possibility that we might be dealing with patients who are drawing from their HSAs rather than traditional premiums. And And here's a tip for your listeners now. We don't ask about any flexible spending or HSAs when we talk about treatment plans, and we really should. Here's a 1,500 benefit we're going to get from the insurance company. By the way, do you have any FSAs or HSAs in your office? Because you could use that too. So,
Yeah.
we should be talking about that at financial presentations anyways. All that aside, the membership plans are huge right now. And that's a whole different level of accounting. The membership plans are huge, and I don't think they're going away. And in fact, I think you're going to see more polished versions of them. The marketing is going to get better. There are companies that will administer for you for a fee. There's a lot of, I talk to a lot of office managers who are like, yeah, I can do this myself. It doesn't matter. As long as you're offering something, I think that is going to be one of those offerings from a practice that we see as optional now, but in the future is going to be, why don't you have one? So I think you do need to investigate that, and especially check into your state board though, and make sure that you do everything according to their rules. Some of the state boards have actually passed some laws on it, so we need to be careful with that.
And my experience in talking to people have been just don't try stuff at home.
Yeah.
It's so easy to run afoul of the laws related to discounts, and some of the state laws are very complex. Just
Yes.
because somebody does it in New York, it's going to be completely different in California
Yes.
with respect to what you can say, not say, the disclaimers, and
Yeah.
there's so much complexity.
It,
Um,
it was very interesting, Amal, because I was lecturing up in Washington State, and I was in Spokane, and then I went to Seattle or Bellevue. So I was talking about the membership plans, and I did not realize that in the state of Washington, the insurance commissioner has a lot of issues with membership plans. And
uh,
they've actually been calling offices and telling them to cease offering membership plans because they were acting as insurance companies, and you need
wow.
all sorts of licenses and bonds and all that kind of stuff. And it scared a lot of these offices. So that's frightening to get a call from the state insurance commissioner.
Absolutely, because you could lose on the other side quite big.
Right.
Um, but
Absolutely.
but there's good guys out there. I mean, there's amazing membership companies out there that have gone through and spent all the legal fees in every state to make sure they're compliant. And you can white label them these days, right? You can call it your own, and
Right.
so that's great. Um,
Another software, or not software, but offering that's popping up. I'm really excited about this. I'm really taking a look at these companies, the ones that are going directly to the consumers, using apps to reach consumers and connecting them with dentists. So we talked to the teledentist, right? Maria from teledentist. So that's one version of it, but that is definitely something that's coming up. So I'll give you an example, is this company called Wally. They will connect you to a doctor, and the doctor uses their fee schedule, and it's a percentage off of that fee schedule, and it's transparent. The patient knows ahead of time what's going on, and they can make their appointment directly through the app. And
right.
we're an Uber Lyft society. We're Grubhub. We're all of that. I'm not saying that dentistry is Grubhub. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we need to pay attention to the convenience that's offered by these companies. And if we can connect dentists together with patients and skip membership plans and third party and all that kind of stuff, it's straight A line, point A to point B. It's a straight line, and that's always going to be a good thing for the patient.
And I think as dentists think about ramping up and to restarting their practices, you need to think about these things now, because you're going to have you could have a segment of your population that doesn't have any insurance. So let's figure this out now so that you can get them into the door, because if they can't come in the door, then you've lost that opportunity. Obviously, you have other things with your schedule and everything to optimize, but still, there could be a percentage of your patients that have lost insurance, and you need options for them to get back in. This is fantastic. I think we should continue doing this as we learn more. We'll continue doing these webinars, and you obviously are the expert in this. So every time we have an insurance issue, I'd like call Teresa. We tell every single person that I know. Like, I don't know anything, just call Teresa, because insurance,
So
just like
sweet.
taxes. just like taxes, it's a complex animal.
I would be like, call them all. Oh my God.
And I don't even do that full time anymore. I mean, I'm focused on Patient Prism, and you lose sight of it when you're not doing it.
It's true.
But anyway, a good way to get a hold of Teresa, and we're going to leave this information on the screen. It's odysseymanagement.com. She's got a fantastic podcast called Nobody Told Me That. It's great learning. It's like, wait, don't tell me, like NPR type of thing, where it's like that for dental insurance. And you've got to order her book. Information is here on the screen as well. Moving Your Patients to a Yes. It's about easy insurance conversations. And then she's done over 40 videos with us on Patient Prism Academy. And right now, Patient Prism Academy is, we're offering it to the industry at no cost for 90 days. So if you want to watch more of Teresa's greatness, sign up, enroll now, and you're going to be, you're going to see a lot of amazing things, amazing videos she's done on insurance and how to become a good insurance coordinator and many other topics. Thank you so much, Teresa, for joining me and helping our audience get an understanding of what's happening with insurance. And
it's always a pleasure. And you know what you're doing for the industry with offering the 90-day access and just in general, all the information you put out, it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, and stay safe. And we'll talk again soon.